Okay, so as we were talking about in part 2, we were talking about the Earl Warren Court. He was the Chief Justice, and he was brought up on impeachment charges. They regularly did this. Congress would bring the justices up on charges, or whoever was, having conduct that was not becoming would come up on charges. And like I said, 2 of the justices got removed, one for public drunkenness, one for cursing in the Supreme Court. And they used to have a minister come and pray before deliberations, before the court got started. We are funded on Judeo-Christian principles. Never doubt that. We've even talked about when the Supreme Court door closes, we're looking at the 10 Commandments. Originally, when the Supreme Court met, they met for 2 weeks a year. Can you guys imagine that? Now they meet for over 9 months. But they met 2 weeks a year. They met Monday through Saturday. It was not intended to be this huge third branch like we've made it. And they met in whatever room was available. So if there was the, little chapel available, that's where they met. If there was an interior room available, that's fine. They have all these different offices there, and they would meet wherever it was available. Well, eventually, Congress met kind of in the basement there, the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives then moved up eventually to the first floor. And when they did that, the U.S. Supreme Court got their permanent home in the basement floor of the Capitol building. So they met there. And then eventually, the House of Representatives moved. And when they did that, then the Supreme Court moved up. And then that became their permanent home. So it was, like I said, never intended. And it's so funny because the Founding Fathers were very deliberate. When they made plans, when they built Washington, D.C., they had in mind growth, like that the city was going to grow. They had plans for streets and buildings and how they were going to grow and everything. And the fact that they didn't on purpose make a building for the Supreme Court says a lot. And David Barton, of course, I'm taking most of my information from him and research he's done. And it really is amazing because, we just never realized that. Of course, we know all this, but when he kind of puts it together and you go, oh, that's right, I never thought about it that way. It just comes from it from a different point of view. So I think that's very interesting. So where the Supreme Court meet now is their permanent home. And they've got the 10 Commandments engraved in the doors that shut. I think it's awesome. The U.S. Capitol we were talking about, it was designed to be a church. From the moment it was opened, it was designed to be a church. On Sunday mornings, it was a church. Many of our presidents, have regularly attended church there. I think it was Thomas Jefferson that called in the military, thought they needed some help with the singing, and so called in the military band for that. We're just funded on Judeo-Christian principles. I don't know if I straightened it or there we go. I think I straightened it. All right. And they always prayed over the proceedings. Let me think if there's anything else on here. Since I never really use my notes and then I go, I kind of go crazy and then I have to find my stuff. All right. I think we're at the point where we're going to talk about Marbury versus Madison. And remember, you guys, I said don't let your little limbic system come up. You can understand this, okay? I might just want to write it out for you. Let me see how this is going to go. Maybe I'll write it on this piece of paper. It might be easier just for you. I'm sorry I didn't have this done ahead of time. But I think that might be easier for you guys to understand. All right. There was a guy, and his name was John Adams, second president of the United States. Let me see if you guys are going to be able to see this. Let's see if I write. Oh, that's going to be hard to see. Oh, I wish I had a pen. All right, so John Adams, and he was a Federalist. And we talked about a Federalist in class. Federalist means they like big government. So they, big reaching government. An anti-Federalist, therefore, like smaller government, okay? So John Adams was a Federalist. He liked big government. Thomas Jefferson liked little government. So that's just it's kind of like just your worldview. Thomas Jefferson thought leave it in the hands of the people and the states. John Adams thought, no, we know better than you. I know that's kind of oversimplifying, and of course I'm an anti-federalist, so I'm going to simplify it in my favor. But anyway, so John Adams is a Federalist. I'm going to write this on here, and then we'll see if you can see it. And Thomas Jefferson Jefferson, again, was an anti-federalist, okay? Well, there was an election, and remember, John Adams only served one term, and I was telling you guys this in class, but when Andrew Jackson, who gets a bad rap, I know Trail of Tears and all that, but Andrew Jackson really did so many things. I mean, yeah, Andrew Jackson in his lifetime. And when he lost the election years later against John Quincy Adams, really he won the election. He just didn't win the majority of votes, but he won way more votes than John Adams and the other guys who were running, okay? So, and John Adams won like, I'm saying this off the top of my head, so it could be wrong, but like 20% or something, or 18%, and he won like 46%. So people wanted Andrew Jackson. While the people in Congress and the elite kind of were very nervous about Andrew Jackson being president. And they thought, oh my word, people in muddy boots are going to be in the White House, which incidentally is what happened. He was a man of the people. He was kind of known for that. So anyway, they got together and because if there's no clear winner, then it goes to Congress. And they got together, and John Adams said, I will be, or, you know, they decided, I'll be president, you be Secretary of State, Andrew Jackson gets the boot. Even he won a huge majority of the votes compared to everybody else. And so John Adams got put in. Well, you can imagine how upset Andrew Jackson was. He should have won by rights, whether they had a runoff or whatever. He really should have been the next president. And so he said, "That's okay. You know, well, he'll serve one term just like his daddy," which he did serve one term. And that's how I always remember that John Adams only served one term. And I just thought that was funny. Andrew Jackson, he was a man of the people. He was probably gruff and rough. And I don't know if y'all know this about Andrew Jackson too, but somebody shot him twice at point blank range, and he was not shot. Isn't that funny? Twice. Something happened and the gun jammed, and I mean point blank range, right there on the second floor, I believe it was in the personal quarters. Came out and tried to shoot him twice. It should have worked, and it didn't. And I think how we can't see the sovereign hand on our country, I don't understand. But anyway, Andrew Jackson. So it's just a little point about John Adams, so you can remember he served one term. I know I love this period in history, so I can't help but throw stuff in. I'm sorry. All right, so John Adams is a Federalist. Let's see if you guys can see this. Ooh, it's kind of hard. I'm sorry, guys. And Thomas Jefferson was an anti-Federalist, okay? So they had an election, and overwhelmingly, I mean, it was a blowout. People elected Thomas Jefferson, the anti-Federalist. So they're saying, government, get out of my way. That's what the people are saying. And they also elected an anti-Federalist Congress. So people overwhelmingly said, we don't want big government in our lives. Out, give them the boot. So John Adams, being the Federalist that he is, he thought, well, we're not going to be in power anymore. The Federalists aren't going to be in power anymore. So before I go out, I'm going to appoint 16 federal judges to the bench. And I'm going to put all these Federalist judges in who will rule like we would rule and try to kind of change the course of things. Now, people had overwhelmingly said, we want anti-Federalists. But, he was going to make it happen. So he nominated 16 judges to the bench. And those 16 judges that he nominated went to the Senate. And then the Senate was Federalist. Because, they were what we call a lame duck Senate and a lame duck presidency. And that means they've already been booted out, but they get 2 more months to serve before they leave. And so it's kind of, it's kind of interesting. At the end of Obama's term here, he'll be a lame duck president. So a lot of times they try to do things. They don't have to worry about an election. It's a lame duck. Sometimes things get, kind of held up. Oh, let's wait till the new president. But sometimes they try to do things. And, of course, that's when they do pardons and all kinds of stuff that they normally couldn't get away with. I remember Clinton did a lot of controversial pardons and stuff. So he elected 16 judges to the federal bench, and then the lame duck Senate, who was Federalist, passed all the judges and said, okay, these judges can be, these judges can go ahead and be in the Supreme Court. So, I mean, not in the Supreme Court, in federal courts. So the Senate was, they kind of just all pushed it through. All right, I'm going to continue on the next section because it's going to be a big part. So hold on for the next section.